And let's start with that Chiefs-Ravens matchup. Jackson, I'll go to you. Your instant reaction to Chiefs and Ravens.
It was exactly what I thought it would be. At the beginning of the week, I had the Chiefs beating the Ravens. Lamar isn't great in big games when he knows the pressure's on. To be fair, he's 4-0 in prime time up until tonight, but when it comes to the bright lights, big names, big spot, put your name on the map other than the MVP award he won last season, he's not very good. He had less than 100 passing yards. He had a fumble lost. I think he had more rushing yards than he had passing yards tonight. It was a rough night for him. I think tonight showed that there is 3 tiers to quarterbacks in the league. There's Russell Wilson and Patrick Mahomes, and then there's Lamar Jackson and Aaron Rodgers, and then there's everybody else. Actually, no, add Kyler Murray to tier 2. He's been fantastic. Other than 3 interceptions he threw. Yeah. No. But that's what I thought it would be.
Yeah, this is why I don't really. A lot of people are saying that, the Ravens are going to be AFC champs and this and that, and I just have never seen it, because this is what happens when they get to these big games, when they are going against a good opponent like the Chiefs or even like the Titans last year in the divisional round. They choke. They look terrible, and on both sides of the ball, especially offense. So I mean, I think there's like this kind of mental stigma that they have to get over, and I don't see that happening anytime soon.
Yeah, and going back to what Jackson said about the tiers, like I think about halfway through the game, about at halftime, I was sitting here and I was thinking about this game, and I was going, I was actually talking to my dad about this, and I was going, when we were talking about who was going to be the MVP and all these different quarterbacks, Aaron Rodgers, Kyler Murray, Russell Wilson, Patrick Mahomes, yada, yada, yada. And we were having a conversation about how MVP should be defined by, if you take this player away from a team, does this team fall off the map or get significantly worse? And in my opinion, the first tier that Jackson named should be called the MVP tier, because in my opinion, there are only 2 teams in the league right now where if you pulled the quarterbacks out of there, they would fall off the map with the success they're having, and that is the Seahawks and the Chiefs. I believe if the Chiefs did not have Patrick Mahomes, they would not be having the same success, in my opinion.
Well, you got to keep in mind with the quarterback position. Excuse me, Brandon. With the quarterback position, if any of your starting quarterbacks get injured, your team is not the same at all.
Well, I mean, I'm talking about a real falling off the map. I'm talking about a not having the same level of success. I just don't see the Chiefs or the Seahawks, for that matter, being as successful as they are without the quarterbacks they have, because both Mahomes and Wilson bring this level of competitive fire, gonna get it done, going to win the day sort of mentality that pushes their team just to that upper echelon that other quarterbacks aren't quite able to bring.
Mm-hmm. In looking at this game, for me, it was weird seeing the Ravens passing game be incredibly non-existent. I wasn't as concerned with the defense, because I felt like, it wasn't beautiful. It wasn't excellent by any stretch, but there were spots. I mean, they came back at some point, in the third quarter. There were spots where they made some good plays and stressed Patrick Mahomes to some degree. It was mostly, Clyde Edwards-Helaire kind of struggling a little bit in those situations. But the main issue that I had was that Ravens passing game, because I know that defense is good. I don't see the defense not being good for the next 14 weeks we have left or whatever it is. But that passing game is frustrating, because I came into the season thinking, okay, Lamar's going to be better as an overall passer, and it just wasn't there. And I think that's the biggest problem with the Ravens right now, is where really is Lamar's passing game? I mean, are there teams where he does have good passing days? Yes, we saw it in week 1, and Brandon and I even was really excited about that after week 1. But looking at this game, I just look at their passing game and go, it's non-existent. Literally all their best plays today were run plays. All of them. That's really concerning.
I mean, that's kind of what I expect of this team anyways, because that's just what they, like last year, that's what they built themselves on, is, having all these backs, and then of course Lamar running for 1,200 yards or whatever. They just don't. I mean, you go up against a defense that's even somewhat good, and then you kind of see, because that's, I mean, how do I say this? It's becoming apparent that people are starting to figure out, like defenses are starting to figure out Lamar Jackson. They're starting to really figure out how to stop him. You can just see it in the defensive game plan and the schemes, whatnot. And yeah, he's really good. He's very electric, very fast, athletic. But I think he's somewhat limited right now, because there's still this giant hump that he has to get over in terms of, continuing to evolve his game. And he just hasn't, in my opinion.
Yeah, and
yeah,
I've seen Lamar for a season and a half now play in the National Football League, and there's a reason I don't rank him as high as I do 5 other quarterbacks, which is Russell Wilson, Patrick Mahomes, Aaron Rodgers, Drew Brees, and Tom Brady. It's because, one, I don't think he elevates his teammates the way that Russ and Patrick Mahomes do, as well as Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady, and Drew Brees. I also don't think he has the composure to be as great as those quarterbacks. I was watching him tonight. It's a big difference I noticed with Russ and Lamar is Russ gets sacked, he gets up, he shakes it off, he tells his O-lineman, okay, let's get back to it the next play. I saw Lamar get sacked tonight late in the fourth quarter, and he was screaming at his O-lineman. He was complaining to the refs. He was not holding his composure. And he wasn't really putting throws in all the right places. There was a few drops by Marquise Brown tonight that I thought could have, persuaded and switched the way the drive were going.
and
I just don't think he has the qualities to be a great quarterback like Russell Wilson, Aaron Rodgers, and Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah, and I'll say in his defense, going back to talking about how what I believe it was what Shane said about how defenses are figuring him out. When Shane said that, it kind of made me think about how I would say it was about 3 years into Russell's career that defenses, at least in the NFC West, really started being like, okay, his whole thing is like he does a bunch of like great play breaks down and then he runs for crazy touchdowns, and they run the ball. Like, he was never really the like arm strength throw guy for his first couple of years. And to give Russell credit, he did have a couple years to be able to build up his arm, his throwing accuracy, and his throwing ability. Like, not to say he was not good at throwing coming into the league, but he definitely
evolved his game.
He evolved his game. Saying that, that's the one thing I will say I'll give Lamar the benefit of the doubt. He has not had the ability to have 3 or 4 years to evolve his game to transfer over into more of a passing game. However, I will say if he wants to be successful and continue to have a long-term success in the league, he's going to need to figure out a way. And I think it's a mixture of him as a player and also his coaching staff being like, look, they're figuring it out. You can't just do the run around in circles and then like hope for the play and then do something crazy when the play breaks down. You have to become a thrower. Not all the time, but you can't just do the same thing that every other running quarterback has done for the first year of their career. Because if you think about it, that helps teams learn a quarterback who's an athletic quarterback coming into the league. They just look at every other quarterback who's been athletic and be like, okay, you can do this, this, and this to stop them.
No, but here's my question, though, and I think week 1 can provide this example. But where do you see that growth? Like, I want to see some of it now. It doesn't have to be complete. And again, I'm a big Lamar Jackson apologist. I had him ranked really high in our quarterback draft. I like him a lot. I think we talk about electric, all these things. But even with Russell, for example, and I think it's a prime example, there were flashes of him as a passer. There were pieces where you felt like, okay, he can develop. I mean, yes, it's only a year and a half of him actually starting, but I don't know if we've actually seen that development happen yet. And that's where I'm concerned. Like,
Well, that's my point. Like, he's not. I don't think they're trying hard enough to just put the past game in play as a focal point. Whereas with Seattle, when they started being like, okay, people are figuring out our game plan with Russell, they really started putting in place kind of more of a focal point on throwing the ball, which has led to where we are at now with the Seahawks, where it's like, look at all these wide receiver threats, throw that ball, Russ. Like,
letting Russ cook.
Exactly. It's
Right.
It's not a you go from running the ball all the time to Russell throwing the ball over time in one season. It's kind of, you build it up, and I just think I'm not like. What my point is I believe they need to focus Lamar's ability at throwing the ball, because I believe from what I've seen, he has a good arm. He just needs to learn to get more. He needs to be more accurate, and I think he also needs to have a better relationship with his wide receivers, because Russell Wilson, he gets to know every one of his players, and it's obvious that he has a great connection with every one of his wide receivers. And that makes a huge difference.
It makes his receivers better. Tyler Lockett wouldn't be the same player if he wasn't in Seattle. Same with DK. But again, my point. So you feel like we haven't really we haven't seen the development switch at all, like, because that's where I haven't. I don't think we have. Yeah.
No, but even if my thing with Lamar Jackson is, even if he does develop, my biggest issue with him is still this like stigma in his mind of like being able to show up in big games. You know what I mean? Because normally he plays, in any ordinary Sunday on a 1:00 game, he plays really well and he looks like a top 3 quarterback. But then, you get him in a game against, the Chiefs or playoffs or whatever, and he just kind of chokes. Which, developing himself as a player and as a passer will help that for sure. But, I just think there's more to it than that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.